Roth and Natalie Mandelblatt are interviewing Rabbi Bernard Poupko on July 26, 1976. Oral History 2, Council of Jewish Women.
Thank you, Natalie. Rabbi, we're very happy that you are agreeing to give us the benefit of your very exciting background, which I think is well known in the Jewish community of Pittsburgh. Would you tell us about your immediate family? We have as much time as you need, and I know that you have many exciting generations of people that you will tell us about, and anything that you would like to tell us, we'll be very happy to hear.
I was born in the Soviet Union, and my father, Rabbi Eliezer Poupko, was the chief rabbi of the historic Jewish community of Velizh in White Russia. I say historic because the first blood libel accusation against Jews in Tsarist Russia took place in our community in the year 1823, when the entire Jewish community was arrested. They were kept in a prison camp for some 3 or 4 years, and they were accused of murdering a Christian boy to use his blood for the Pesach matzah. And therefore, the city is known in history.
Could you spell the name of that place?
Yeah, it is spelled V-E-L-I-Z, Velizh. It is in the neighborhood of Minsk and Vitebsk. Vitebsk, the city of Chagall. Actually, it is 80 miles away from Vitebsk, where Chagall was born and where he started his artistic work. Now, my father was several times arrested by the Soviet government because they intercepted letters of his which were sent to rabbinic leaders in the United States, in England, and in Israel, which was then Palestine, describing to them the precarious conditions of Jewish life during the Stalin era, when they closed up all of the religious educational facilities, and when they desecrated many synagogues and arrested and executed many rabbis and other religious functionaries. But then there was also a trial against my father in Soviet Russia, and this was in 1930. And he was convicted and given 2 years of hard labor in Siberia. As a result of the very vigorous intercession of Jewish leaders in the United States and in Europe, the sentence was removed, and he was ordered to remain under home arrest, which means he could not leave the city where we live. He could not travel beyond it. And then, of course, my father did not give up the hope of getting out of Russia because there were several reasons for it. First of all, 3 oldest brothers, one was 13, and one 11, and one 9, were virtually smuggled across the boundary lines between Soviet Russia and Poland. And this was in 1925, so that they could learn in a yeshiva. There were no yeshivas in Russia. And my parents paid a man whose occupation was in Minsk to smuggle over people across the boundary lines, which was very dangerous because whoever was caught, they were shot immediately. There was no trial even. They paid them an enormous sum in golden rubles. They took those boys across. cross, and we did not hear from them for over 2 years. We did not know whether they're dead or alive. And obviously there was a desire to see what happened with those boys, to see them in Poland. We knew already that they were alive. We knew exactly where they were. So there was a tremendous eternal temptation to get out of the Soviet Union and be able to see the 3 oldest boys. We, in our family, we were 6 boys and 2 girls, and there was a time in the United States when we were the only 6 ordained rabbis of any family, 6 brothers ordained rabbis, because eventually all of us reached the United States. It would be a long story to tell how unexpectedly and how totally unbelievable my parents did manage to get out of the Soviet Union in 1932. It's a story by itself, a very long story. It was totally unexpected. All I can say is that not all of us left our city at the same time. My father was disguised as a Russian peasant because he could not leave town. He was like under arrest, and he left in the middle of the night 3 days before, and then my mother woke us up about 2 o'clock in the morning. She told us not to say a word, not to take anything. We left over a house with about 14 rooms, all of our possessions, and we went to the river. And there my mother engaged a peasant with a small boat, a boat which he had to row. And we went over 130 miles on the water, and we were still afraid if we would have been caught, it would have been death, at least for the adults of the family. And disguised and in secrecy, we reached a railroad. And then we came to the boundary line, Siebierz, between Soviet Russia and Latvia. But we did have passports. And Dr. Rosen, the late Dr. Rosen of the United States, who was the head of the Joint Distribution Committee, JDC, in Russia, was a luminous personality. He was in no small measure responsible for making it possible for my parents to get the passports to leave the Soviet Union, and he kept it so that they could not be confiscated, because the JDC then in Moscow enjoyed diplomatic immunity like a foreign office. In fact, the communists were happy with the JDC because they brought over hundreds of American tractors, not only for Birobidzhan, that which was supposed to have been the Jewish Autonomous Republic, but they gave it also to the collective farms, many of these tractors, and thus teaching the Russians some of the modern ways of agrarian methods farming as it was practiced in the United States. So Rosen, although it was the black era of Stalin, he enjoyed special status. He was a very intimate and close friend of my late father, and he played a very important role in it. Incidentally, it should be mentioned that Dr. Rosen was an internationally known expert on farming, on agrarian science. And of course, we cannot forget this name, who was so much helpful to us. In fact, to the moment, from the time we left our home in the middle of the night until we reached the train which was supposed to take us from Russia across the border to Latvia, it was about 3 days, and we were all in fear. Anytime if we would have been apprehended, it would have been our end, and so forth. And finally, we made it in Latvia. We were the only people traveling in a train with about 17 wagons. This is how few people were able to get out then from the Soviet Union. We were unusually lucky. It was some kind of a miracle, whatever it might have been. And to make a long story short, we were reunited with our brothers, my parents' oldest 3 children, in Warsaw, Poland. We went from Latvia to Poland, and of course they did not want to let us in Poland, because Poland had a law that anyone coming from Russia could not come into Poland. The Pilsudski did not want to have anything of communism or anything of former citizens. So special legislation, because of the prominence of my father, was passed in the Sejm, which is the parliament of the Poles, and they permitted us to come in for several months in Poland, just on a temporary visit, and there the family was reunited. And from there, the family continued. My father was invited to a rabbinical position in St. Louis. But there, the climate was not the best for him. So from St. Louis, we went to Haverhill, Massachusetts. He was rabbi there, and then Providence, Rhode Island invited him to become the community rabbi, which he did. And later on, in the 1941, he became the dean of the Orthodox Rabbinate of Philadelphia. I came to Pittsburgh in 1942. Actually, I did not come to be here permanently as a rabbi. I was then a student at Columbia University, working for my master's degree in political philosophy and in history under Professor Silo Baron. But they, Shara Torah, that is needed a rabbi for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. So, being that I could speak also Yiddish, and in 1942 there was a preponderance of Yiddish-speaking members in the Shara Torah on Townsend Street. And at Yeshiva University there were very few students who could speak Yiddish. They were mostly American-born, Native American. So I was recommended for this position. And then, although I came on a temporary basis, I was invited to remain as on a permanent basis to take the position of the late Rabbi Zivitz, who was an internationally known rabbinic scholar and leader. And this was a frightening challenge to me, because Rabbi Zivitz was not only a great scholar, he left over some 19 volumes, scholarly work, which was internationally recognized, but he was a very, very revered and venerated rabbinic personality throughout the Jewish world. And to me, it was a frightening thing to step in the boots of such a personality. Still and all, I did accept the position because there was an opportunity. There were two opportunities here. First of all, to build a synagogue on that pattern which I wanted to build. I felt that here I could fashion something not the way it was handed to me, but the way I would like to see it. Because I did feel that new generations have new challenges and they have new needs. Rabbi Zivitz might have been a great rabbi, but his conditions and the requirements of his age were not the requirements of my age. And this was one incentive. Another incentive was that I could continue my graduate work, in which I was very much interested, at the graduate school of the University of Pittsburgh, which, of course, admitted me, and where I was given an opportunity to finish my work for my doctorate, where I did finish it. And then I started building almost single-handedly the new synagogue in Squirrel Hill. When we started building the synagogue, when we acquired this piece of land, we had in the bank only $6,500. This edifice in which you sit now is valued at $1.25 million right now, this piece of real estate here. So you probably have questions, and I think I was talking too much and too fast, and you didn't have an opportunity to ask.
Well, all right, we'll stop and ask a few questions.
I have one,
Right,
just
Natalie.
very specific one. This Dr. Rosen from the JDC.
Dr. Joseph Rosen.
And where was he from? Was he a Russian?
He was originally from Russia, and this he came to the United States and he studied, but because he knew Russian and he was very much aware and he knew the background, therefore the JDC felt that he would be the man to represent them there. Without the language and without the culture, and if you don't know the environment, you couldn't do much in the Soviet Union.
Many questions crossed my mind as you were talking, and I was so fascinated that I didn't even make notes of them. But when you said that you were traveling, you must have made previous arrangements long before you undertook this trip? When you met the boat, for example,
Oh, this
someone
was my
had
mother's.
your
Yeah.
mother had arranged this,
Exactly, certainly.
and
It
also
was
where
very secretly, and when the boat was arranged, it was told only that we're going to this city, to Vitebsk, nothing else.
what the body of water you said you were on?
Oh, the Dvina, D-V-I-N-A. It's a well-known river in the Soviet Union,
River.
almost as well known as the Mississippi or the Missouri here.
It's a very large, very
Yeah,
long
yeah.
river, evidently.
Sure, it falls into the Baltic.
How old were you at the time?
When this thing happened, I'll tell you exactly. This was in 19... what did I say? In 1932, right?
Said.
And I was born in 1918. So here you have it. It's 14 years old.
You were 14, imagine.
Yeah, but I remember it though.
Well, of
As
course.
if it happened yesterday.
Your brothers that were at the yeshiva in Poland, were they older than you at
Oh
that
yes,
point?
yeah. I was number 5 in the family.
Number 5.
Yes.
And are they all?
No, 2 of them, unfortunately, I lost.
You lost.
They came here. They
Oh.
served in the rabbinate. One of them was a very prominent rabbi in Philadelphia, left over 4 scholarly volumes, and his son is a very prominent doctor in Connecticut now, only child that he left. And my other brother, Rabbi Abraham, he was also a rabbi in Philadelphia, but he passed away at the age of 52. Reuben passed away at the age of 33. And the one who passed away at the age of 52, he left over 5 children. Both sons are rabbis, and the 3 son-in-laws are rabbis. And 2 of them are very prominent, and he left over girls and daughters who studied at Stern College, and they're well known for their scholarly work on their own. I could show you Tradition, the scholarly journal of the Rabbinical Council of America, and there's Dr. Poupko, his daughter-in-law, who writes a very important scholarly paper on this, but unfortunately he passed away at the time. And my other brothers are in the rabbinate in the United States and in Israel.
How many are in
Yes,
Israel?
one is in Israel.
You have a daughter who is married and lives in Israel, isn't that so?
Yeah.
Is she married to a rabbi
Oh,
too?
yes. Not only a rabbi, he's professor of Talmud in Jerusalem, and he's a well-known rabbinic author. He authored already 2 books, and he publishes very frequently in rabbinic scholarly journals. Here I have about 6 or 8 of his articles in Israeli rabbinic journals, his works, and also in American scholarly journals. And she's working for her graduate degree at the Hebrew University, and she teaches in a girls' college in Jerusalem. And they have 2 children.
I think I met her, didn't I?
Yes,
With,
sure.
when my son had a party.
Right.
Yes.
She was here.
Yes.
Yes,
Rabbi, can you tell us how many living rabbis there are in your family right now?
Well, it depends. If you will say family, nephews, and uncles, and cousins, the entire Poupko branch, branching out on both sides and all around, speak conservatively, I would say we have at least, on Ein Hore, over 200 serving in the rabbinate, in Europe, the United States, Latin America, and Israel.
It's fabulous, isn't it?
Well, I'll show you in our own immediate family.
Yes.
In our own immediate family. My mother, God bless her, is about 85. In fact, I spoke to her on the phone just an hour ago. She has 19 grandsons ordained rabbis. 19 grandsons. And there are many younger ones who are stepping into yeshivas or are in yeshivas now studying. So I'm giving you an example, and she has grandchildren, about 35, and together with great grandchildren, I think she has 48. So you can see, and almost all of them are exposed to a Jewish, an intensive Jewish education. This is the tradition in the family. Whether they remain in the occupation or not, but they have to be educated enough Jewishly to be ordained.
And they're all in the Orthodox
Well,
orientation?
I have already several cousins, I have studied who are also in the conservative Rabbi. Several, I would say about 3 or 4.
Well, that's not very many.
Yeah.
Because I know that orthodoxy is something that you maintain very strictly and you stand for very staunchly.
We try.
I know
to
that.
some extent.
I'm wondering if we can hear Rabbi Poupko's voice on the tape for a minute, just to make sure that we're catching everything. Would you mind?
Am I too far?
No, you're not too far. I just feel that these are so important, the things you're telling us, and it's almost impossible to get down all of the things.
Okay.
I have 2 sisters. One is my twin sister, and she is married to Rabbi Mordechai Savitsky of Boston. He authored the commentary upon the Babylonian Talmud, and is an internationally known expert of the Talmud and Jewish law. In fact, his first book on rabbinics he published when he was 17 years old in Poland, and this was quite an event. My younger sister is married to Rabbi Schwartz, also a well-known rabbinic scholar. He's rabbi of the Young Israel in Brooklyn, in Borough Park, and he's 3rd generation born in the United States. 3rd generation born here, and he authored 2 books on rabbinics.
Would you spell your twin husband?
Yes, Rabbi Mordechai Savitsky, Savitsky.
Okay.
Savitsky, I think. Here, just somebody brought me a newspaper where there was an article on this.
Is that the 60s?
He doesn't look like a Reform rabbi, nor not even like the modern Orthodox rabbi.
He is a Reform rabbi?
No.
No, that my question.
This is an article about one of his latest books. There is a review and there is a write-up on it.
Well, I'm not going to take your time.
No, that's all right.
Yes, we would like some of the things that you can spare to put with your material later. If you have,
I can get it together, and I'll be more than happy to do it.
Yes,
That's
fine.
I have a tremendous reservoir of those tremendous collection.
And a photograph, perhaps, of you.
We can get it for
Yes,
you.
that would
I'll
be lovely for us to have.
Yeah.
And it's very desirable in the case of a person like yourself.
Now, our oldest son, Joel, served during the last 5 years as Neighborhood Hillel Rabbi at the University of Michigan. And now he was promoted to be the Neighborhood Hillel Director for a full region. That is for Chicago and the neighboring cities. So they just moved last week to Chicago, and there he will be directing the work of some 19 or 20 rabbis on university campuses. And he has written extensively, especially for the Bnei Brit Monthly Journal and others, and in Europe on the Holocaust. He is considered an authority on the Holocaust. They sent him on a fellowship 3 times to Poland to study the concentration camps. And in fact, Eli Wiesel refers to him as a serious student of the Holocaust. And he has been traveling and lecturing extensively on the campuses on the Holocaust. And our second son, Jacob Moses, is the Associate Dean of the Rabbinical College of Florida, which is in Miami. He's serving in this position now, his third year. And our two youngest children are twins, Reuben and Rebecca. And Rebecca is a graduate of the Hillel Academy, and she was just now accepted to the Girls' College of Jerusalem, where she will study this coming year. And Reuben is studying in a rabbinical college. So that takes care of the family.
Yes,
And of course, we have grandchildren.
Have you? Many?
Yes, not many. We have only 5.
Well, I think you're doing very well
Yeah.
for the Jewish perpetration of the Jewish population at its highest level.
We try.
I think that's great. The next question that we have, and you've almost conveyed it to us in some way, is your home, your atmosphere, the religious atmosphere of your home, which is very obvious.
I should have mentioned that my mother is a Talmudic scholar in her own right. She's the only woman mentioned in the Who is Who in the World Rabbinate, which was published in Vilna some 52 years ago. They write about her that she knew so much Talmud when she was 13 that she gave lessons to other students. Those days it was extremely rare that a girl should be, God bless you, should be, let this be on the record, that a girl should be exposed to higher Jewish education. And in fact, my mother was one of the principal speakers here in 1943 when I was installed at the Shara Torah as the rabbi. And later on, she lectured quite a few times here and in other synagogues in Pittsburgh. She used to be a frequent guest speaker in other communities.
Does your mother, does she go under the name of Mrs.?
Yes,
Mrs.
Poupko.
What is the first name?
Pesha Chaya, Mrs. Pesha Chaya.
Pesha, that's my name, isn't
Yes,
it?
fine. P-S-H-A.
Chaim.
Chaya.
Chaya, that's my...
C-H-A-Y-A. Chaya. Pesha Chaya. Her father was the chief rabbi, the same chief rabbi of Saratov. Saratov is a large city in the Soviet Union with a university. S-A-R-A-T-O-V.
I have to stop to get my breath. I'm so overwhelmed with all of this. They're asking about the atmosphere, the religious atmosphere in your home, which is very obvious.
Well, I do want to mention something.
Yes.
I was brought up in an atheistic country. I went to a school which fought religion. When I came into school, I saw on the wall the slogan, "Religion is the opiate of the people." I was forced, physically and otherwise, to attend school on the Sabbath and on the holiday. Otherwise, my parents would have been arrested. And when I went to school, we are called the Stalin children, who were exposed to the most brutal humiliation. If you were the child of a rabbi, or a priest, or of a merchant, or of a manufacturer, anyone in those brackets, they were non-persons, and they were non-citizens. They were not given citizens' rights. And when there was famine and starvation, and most of our life was spent in famine and starvation in Russia, when you had to stay in line, I personally stood in line sometimes 8 hours to get a pound of dry bread, like a piece of brick. But you could get it only if you had a card, a ration card. We could not get a ration card to get our food. And we had to get it through other means, in a black market. It was a struggle of existence. I, for example, until we came into Latvia, I never saw white bread. I didn't know that there is such a thing as white bread. Or we did not know what is sugar. We used saccharin. Sugar was totally, you could not get it. And so forth, but still we survived. Now, we had to go to the synagogue secretly. Our parents would wake us up about 5 in the morning, and we would go to the synagogue when nobody would see us go into the synagogue. We had to receive our Hebrew religious education secretly. Our melamed, our teacher, had a cheder he used to take us in a basement under a basement. And his wife would always watch whether police are around or not. And then he would hide us still in another room if somebody came to look, because it was against the law. Now too it is against the law to teach children religion. You're not permitted to do it. And then it was very, very strict. And under these conditions, we had to acquire and to master how to read Hebrew, how to pray, Bible, Talmud, whatever it was. It was a very trying thing. And if you came to school and said, but it assumed very serious proportions as of after the death of Lenin. When Lenin was alive, there wasn't this kind of persecution. And I must honestly say that during the life of Lenin, there were hundreds of schools in the Soviet Union where they taught even in Yiddish. They taught in Yiddish, mathematics and physics and this and this. Lenin had a different outlook entirely, but Stalin, as you know, he was the most brutal despot. And they wanted to wipe out any vestige of the cultures and the religion and the language of any minority. And this assumed very serious proportions, and especially they were opposed to religion. They felt that once you will uproot religion, you will not have any kind of a semblance of national roots of any of the minorities. And this war, of course, against religion goes on even now.
Were the conditions under Stalin much worse than those under the Tsar?
Yes. Oh, yes. Under the Tsar, there were restrictions. There were pogroms. But under the Tsar, there were thousands of synagogues, tens of thousands of religious functionaries, rabbis, shachtim, and teachers. And however difficult it was, over 5 million Jews produced by way of Hebrew, Yiddish literature, rabbinic scholarship, something which has no parallel in the annals of modern Jewish history, or even since the Middle Ages. They had the largest, the leading rabbinical colleges, yeshivot, what we call. And don't forget that from Tsarist Russia came forth people like Ben-Gurion, like Chaim Weizmann, like Maya Berlin, like Sheltak, all of the giants of the Zionist movement, with all of the restrictions, and they were highly educated people, like Nahum Sokolov. They are the cornerstone of Zionism and of the State of Israel, Golda Meir, and so forth. So certainly under Stalin it was much, much worse. No question about it. Oh, I love the first one when I talked.
No, I just wanted that on the tape.
Oh.
No, the tape's going along.
You see, the cultural, religious, and Zionist contribution of Russian Jewry is so massive, it's so enormous, it has no parallel. Almost in every conceivable area of Jewish creativity, they excelled. And we owe a tremendous debt to this community, who gave us so much by way of letters, by way of Zionism, by way of scholarship, by way of the Hebrew language, in all of these areas.
Oh. Economic, you told us about. Cultural, you told us about. Disciplines, I don't know just what they mean by disciplines. Well, can you tell me, Natalie?
I'm really interested in the economic before we get onto that. I know life was very difficult,
Yes.
but how, because of the restrictions the government put on you,
Yes.
how did you manage financially?
How did we manage? Well, first of all, in the city where we lived, there were quite a few Jewish people who were not as restricted as we are, and there was a very human generosity to the needs of the rabbis of the community. This is number one. Number two, help came from the United States of America. American Jews And those organizations which existed then, they were aware that there was a famine in Russia. They were aware that Jews are being discriminated against, and especially those who are in the category of non-citizens, like rabbis, educators, Zionists, and others. And I do remember once before Passover, we did not know what was going to be. We're not going to have matzah. And suddenly, 3 days before Passover, I remember we got 3 small packages of flour from the United States. And this is what saved us. And we had flour, we had matzah for Passover. And they also, during the height of the famine, from the United States, food came in. However meager, and canned milk or this or this helped out very much. And it kept us from starving.
From what source did it come in the United States?
The United States, like JDC, it was from organized.
Yeah.
It was from the organized Jewish community. And really, they have been very generous, and they understood the need, and they sent packages. They sent to key people packages for distribution to other needy Jews too. And it came to our city just as it came to other cities in Russia.
Did the Jewish Welfare Board, they were functioning at that time, were they involved?
As a youngster, I remember especially the Joint Distribution Committee.
Yes.
I remember that things that used to come from there. And then something else, there were private Jews, friends or relatives who sent packages. And this was a tremendous help. So all in all, but really the organization, the Jewish organization of which we knew in Russia, in America, was the Joint Distribution.
Which they used to call the Joint.
Yeah, that is how they call it.
You had said that you lived in such a large house. Was that owned by the synagogue?
This was built for the rabbi. It was a historic community, and the house was perhaps 80 years old. It was a beautiful place, a palatial place. And everything, the furniture, all of our belongings, everything was left as it is, so that there wouldn't be any suspicion that we left the house. And we were successful. People couldn't get over it. They could hardly believe that we got out alive. My father was marked, and it's one of those miracles.
And the house was furnished to you, given to you.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Through the Soviets.
No, by the Jewish community.
Oh, by the Jewish community.
Oh, yeah, there were still synagogues. When we left in our city, they closed quite a few synagogues. But when we left, I would say at least some 11 or 13 synagogues were still functioning.
You could have held services right in your home.
Yes, but it was very difficult because if a Jew had a job with the government and he was caught entering the synagogue, he lost his job. Even now in Moscow, a man is an engineer. You know, I went back 3 times. I took a chance on my life. I'll show you letters from the State Department that in the long run they said you are taking a chance by going back to Russia. They can claim you as a citizen because in a way you left also illegally Russia. But I went back 3 times. And whenever I spoke to Jews in Moscow, in Leningrad, in Tbilisi, in Odessa, in Kiev, they told me the same stories we had. They would like to go into the synagogue, but if they'll be seen or caught by an agent, he will lose his job.
Were any of your brothers drafted?
No, because the older ones were sent out, and we were left the younger ones, so we were not in the age.
So no one was there at the
not
time.
in the age.
That's how many Jewish people came to the United States.
But during those days, very few Jews left Russia.
They couldn't.
Very small, an incredibly small number. Very in the hundreds a year, not even in the thousands. In the hundreds in a year. That's all.
Well,
I'm talking about the 30s.
Yes.
The dark Stalin era. Then it was only in the hundreds. You check up with any of the records in the United States, you'll see it. Take here in 1973 alone, we got some 32,000 Jews from the Soviet Union in Israel. And of course in the United States we expect this year perhaps some 15,000 that will come in the next 12 months according to our dates. I'm digressing. Yes.
Is the Save Soviet Jewry project netting great results now, would you say?
Everything which is done in the free world to arouse public opinion is of help. I personally know and I believe that if not for the protest, if not for the efforts of Jews in America and the United Kingdom, we would have not had so many thousands of Jews come out of Russia. The Soviet Union is very sensitive to public opinion. And when I brought about this idea, probably it's my idea to save Soviet Jewry.
Didn't know it.
Oh yeah, we started off in Pittsburgh, and then we started off in other communities. And temples, everyone went. Jewish community centers, everyone. Unfortunately, our sign here came up with the wind, and we're getting a new one now. And I started off this idea. I sent out then the letters to the Rabbinate of America, and it went over very well. And the Soviets are very much annoyed. When we do things which annoys them very much, it is occasionally productive. I don't say always, but it is. And therefore, anything we can do to keep alive this issue, and we must keep it alive because we are of a generation which lost 6 million Jews to Auschwitz. And the Soviet Union has over 3.5 million Jews now. This is the second largest Jewish community in the world. And therefore, we must do everything, anything to keep the problem alive.
They are coming out little by
yes.
little.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Natalie? The disciplines. I wasn't sure that I knew what they meant, but do you know what they mean by disciplines? Yes, it's on question 2, the last word.
Yeah, home atmosphere, religious, economic, cultural.
Well, how your family, how your parents handled.
Yes, of course,
children.
there was in our home an intensive religious discipline, no question about it. And this is how my parents succeeded in combating the very, very vigorous anti-religious climate on the outside by having a very intensive religious discipline within the house. So in the United States, let us say that there isn't very much religion in the climate, but there isn't anti-religion. In the Soviet Union, it is very vigorous, the anti-Semitic. And yet, because of the religious discipline at home, my parents succeeded in conveying to us the tradition of Judaism and keeping it and preserving it.
Isn't that amazing? Now, we have this third question, the life of the community of birth and developmental period. Well, I think you've more or less covered that in the background that you've given us.
Right.
It says contrast it with Pittsburgh, if possible.
Yes.
How in the world?
Well, I would contrast that with Pittsburgh. First of all, even during those dark days, there was a higher level of religious commitment and religious observance, and also awareness of your Jewishness. Secondly, even under the repressive measures of the Stalin regime, Jewish parents did go out of the way to give children secretly some kind of a meaningful Jewish education. They have tried their best to convey that tradition to them. And then, of course, I also want to mention that these people, the adults, they were remnants of a previous generation. And scholarship was terribly important. Scholarship was the path for Jewish leadership, for Jewish recognition, and aristocracy meant scholarship. These two words were synonymous. So there was that intensive atmosphere to learn. There was this desire to preserve tradition, even under most insurmountable circumstances, and it is also interesting to know that there was a very strong Zionist feeling. The more dark the repressive measures against Jews were under the Stalin era, the more Jews reacted, and they wanted to know about Palestine and the future. But at the same time, I must say something which is not paradoxical, but very interesting, painfully interesting. There was a substantial element of Jews who were very enthusiastic about communism and about the new regime, and they have joined enthusiastically the Communist Party, and there was especially a group of Jews known as the Sektia, abbreviation of the Russian name Еврейская секция Коммунистической партии Советского Союза, which meant the Jewish section of the Communist Party of the USSR. And they sent a telegram from our own community, the Jewish communists, congratulating the Arabs in 1929 when they made the pogrom and they killed off many Jews, and especially many students of the Hebron Yeshiva. So they congratulated them. And I want to say that those Jewish communists, they were very vigorous, and they were very devoted to the government, and some of them did not mind executing fellow Jews, even as other citizens were executed for minor infractions of the Stalinist code or the Stalinist law, whatever it might have been. And I do know that occasionally my father, as Rabbi of the community, had to go and plead with former students of his not to shoot a certain woman. They found on her premises sugar, and they wanted to know how she got it, and they accused her of contraband, and she was taken out to be shot. And my father went and he interceded. She had younger children, and he did not help. She was shot, and she was executed. And then there were Jewish communists who took some of the wealthiest Jews, and they put them in bags, and they browned them in the tin. They put them in alive, and they browned them. And in a way, you have to understand their psychology. Life for Jews in Tsarist Russia was not difficult. There was the Pale of Settlement. Many, many Jews were denied rights of residence in many metropolitan areas. They were squeezed together in certain areas where it was totally impossible to develop a viable economic or material existence. And there were many who were very, very suppressed, repressed, and especially those who were workers, the tailor, the shoemaker, the artisans, and others. Communism gave them a new lease on life. Communism gave them a promise of education. Communism gave them a promise of acceptance and equality. And they became very enthusiastic, and I will not deny that Jews, you know it yourself, played a very prominent role in the revolution to overthrow the Tsar. And the Tsar, of course, was a vicious anti-Semite. When the Tsar was arrested by the revolutionaries, they found on his night table the protocols of the elders of Tsar. The Tsar himself directed the tragic trial of Velizh in 1913 in Kiev, when he was accused of slaughtering a Christian child for blood for Pesach. So you could not blame some of these young Jews, and some of these socialists, they went to Israel later on. Golda Meir was in that group too. They abhorred, they hated that system. And because of their suffering, and because of their humiliation, after the revolution, when they tasted freedom, and freedom of mobility and whatnot, they became even more enthusiastic. I'll never forget when I walked to Moscow on Saturday from the synagogue on my second return to my native land. I passed by a big monument in the square, and it was Sverdlov, named for Jacob's Sverdlov, Yaakov Sverdlov, and he was a Jew, a prominent Jewish revolutionary, Trotsky. Many of the luminaries of the ideologies, the theoreticians, they were Jews. And many of them took very seriously the communist system, communist law, the communist propaganda measures. And they did, I wouldn't say collaborate. Collaborate is an ugly word. It means when your enemy comes to do. They cooperated. They were enthusiastic because this is how they felt about it. So this was an exciting time, exciting, painfully exciting, I would say, for me as a young boy to grow up in Velizh, in my homeland. I remember, for example, we had a shochet, a ritual slaughterer, a Hasidic Jew, always with a long beard, with earlocks, with a long cotton. And one day, the newspaper announces that the shochet Arnella is going to address the working class of the Jews in the club of the shoemakers. Friday night, it was packed over 1,000 people. And here comes up a new man. When you see somebody always with a beard, no beard, no yarmulke, no hat, no cotton, European attire, and he comes up and he says, I don't believe in God. I never believed in God. The Bible is anti-Semitic. And he started quoting things, an ultra-Orthodox Jew turning this way. Why? Because for weeks before that, they took his hand and they broke all of his fingers in between the door. You understand? And he could not take it anymore. They just beat him up and this until he changed. And this was done with quite a few Jews. Those methods of torture go on even now. There are Jews very prominent Jews, who apply. Didn't you see Susskind show with the 5 Soviet Jews?
No.
Oh, it was twice already in Pittsburgh. Sunday and last week Tuesday night. And nowadays, I just spoke to a Jew in Moscow last week. His brother is in an insane asylum because he's a big mathematician. The Soviets don't want to let him out from Russia, so they declared him insane. And they put him in a bed with 2 demented people. Do you know what kind of a torture it is? I have to go up only once in a while to Western Psychiatric and spend time with some patients, and I go out broken, I'm shattered when I go out from there. But imagine when you put somebody in a bed in between 2 demented people. And this is the kind of torture they give you now. I have seen Jews who arrived in Israel, and they took off their shirts, and they showed to me the wounds and the scars inflicted by them by Soviet police. And those methods still continue. So this is the kind of a life we live. Secrecy, hiding from police, running away from police. My father was running away and hiding from police over 14 continuous months in Moscow and Leningrad. We didn't know whether he was alive. And then when he came back in the middle of the night, banged on the door, searched, arrested. For 2 months, you don't know where he is. My father was arrested over a dozen times like this. And my mother had to go through the agony of going and looking whether he's alive or where he is and this. This is how we were brought up. This was our youth. This was our childhood.
The Jews who became very active in the Communist Party,
Yes.
Did any of them remain as observant Jews?
Only a few, and very secretly, like the Marano Jews of Spain under the Inquisition. Do you know what they used to do? This was time when you couldn't get bread. Look, Soviet Russia now, 1976, when they sent up the first Sputnik. And they are doing phenomenal. They are challenging us in nuclear, atomic weapons and whatnot. And even now, they don't have enough bread here. In many communities, they're starving. And they have to buy bread from us in Canada. And if they wouldn't buy from us, it would be terrible. Imagine how it was 40 years ago, 30 years ago. The famine was terrible. Now, we couldn't get any bread to eat. It was a terrible problem. And they would give you bread if you came in school on Yom Kippur. To make a party, the Jewish communists would make a party on Yom Kippur to desecrate it and to tear out from the child any semblance of religious loyalty. We couldn't get bread otherwise, but they would make for the night of the Seder a big party and make you eat bread, and then they had bread for you to give it to you. They would take out scrolls of the Torah on the street and not only burn it. But first they would desecrate, they would make garbage of it. And in order to tear out from the child everything. And my own schoolmates, they used to say, you are the son of the enemy. You are the son of the spy. You are the son of the thief. You are the son of this. A rabbi, and I will say that the same treatment was for a rabbi and this. Truthfully. I mean, I will not tell you that it was different. Anyone in religion was in trouble and so forth. So this is how we were brought up. It was a dark night. It was a mirage. It was something unbelievable that children could have survived, and this is why they call us the Stalin children.
And yet you never abandoned your religion? You never
No, I did not.
attempted?
I did not. I hate to tell you this, but I will tell you this. And this will show you as to what kind of a faith. I'm not telling it to you in a subjective way now, what I'm going to tell you. It's very big. But in a general way, so that you will have an understanding what a home can do to a child by way of religion. When we left for the United States on the St. Louis, the notorious St. Louis German boat, which had those Jewish refugees, about 1,100, and the United States would not let them in, and then the Nazis put it down, on the deck of the ocean. So you heard of the St. Louis. Now we came with the St. Louis to the United States, but some of us in the family got very, very sick on the boat, and I was miserably sick. So then my mother comes over, and I was running high fever, and I couldn't touch any food, and nothing. Here we went through so much, all of this. And my mother was sitting near me, and she is a very, very strong person, very, very strong. And of course, everyone will try to describe his mother as very special things, but this is the truth. She is a mother who can take and pack 3 youngsters and send them across the boundary, not knowing whether she's going to see them or not, for the sake of Judaism. So my mother, suddenly, she, with her hands at your mouth, was why is it that we deserve so much agony and pain? So I said to my mother in Yiddish, you don't understand Yiddish, I'll give it to you right away in English. I said, I'll tell you why, mother, why we deserve it. Because we had no right to leave our Jews to the Velizh alone. Because my father and all of us, we should have remained to suffer together with them. And therefore God is punishing us now on the boat. And this was said by a youngster of 14 years old. My mother always reminds it to me. And this was our commitment, which we got home. It wasn't just I because of my intelligence or my sensitivity or this. Any boy brought up this way would have probably said, okay.
Imagine that.
But would you just, you were on the ship that was refused admittance to this country?
No. Later on, there were other Jews, you remember, under the Nazis, and they refused to let them in. It came to Miami, and they wouldn't let them out. They had to go back, and they sunk it. With all the Jews.
What ship were you on? Where did you sail from?
We came with the settlers from Hamburg. We had to go to Hamburg, Germany.
But when you were on the boat, you came. You were on.
Oh, yes, sure. We came to New York, but wait, something interesting. So we come, and the government officials say, well, we have no relations with the Soviet Union, and your passport doesn't look so proper. And we were arrested. That was my welcome to the United States on Ellis Island. And we were kept in separate rooms. I, as a young boy, was put in with 3 Chinese who were to be returned back to China. And I spent there 16 days alone in a room on Ellis Island. Because the United States and the Soviet Union had no diplomatic relations. You remember, the diplomatic relations came under FDR. You remember, in 1934, he gave recognition that there is a Soviet Union, which was so stupid on the part of the United States. Here was a reality, a state and so forth. And we were arrested
with China.
And I will not go into our suffering on Ellis Island. What kind of a terrible, traumatic thing it was. I believe one of my sisters still is occasionally sick on account of this experience. They tore us away, each one from the family. They broke up the family. And they probably thought that my mother was a spy, or that we are Russian spies. And we were detained on the island for 16 days for no reason at all. And people had to work on to get us out. And we had family, we had friends that were not even aware. And this was our coming here.
How did you...
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Where was your father at this point? Was he with you or was he
my
already
father went ahead of us 2 months, and he was in St. Louis. But because it was a holiday, he could not travel to meet us in New York. So a first cousin of his came to meet us. Very fine person, everything. But suddenly the officials there decided that there's something wrong. It's Russian passports. And they had very few people coming in from Soviet Union. So they were very suspicious, perhaps they're communists, this and this. And they detained us. 16 days. I would not eat their food, I remember. So I had to live on sunshine crackers and milk, which was not so bad. You could exist
after what you hadn't had all those
This
years.
wasn't so bad. Well, I remember I spent my time sewing. There was a person who came in and gave occupational things, So they taught me how to do some sewing. That's what I did.
So the relative from St. Louis finally got to you.
Oh, yes.
And
they took us up and they apologized later on. They said it was a misunderstanding. They couldn't read the Russian papers.
We do want to know that, but how far in the Russian schools did you have to go, in the secular schools?
Oh, I went and I received my elementary education in the Soviet school, no question about it, and a little bit of the high school. In fact, I was advanced. I was already in the 7th class. It was compared, let's say, to about 3 years of high school here. I was up to that. Because I know when I came here to New York to study at yeshiva, I took the Regency geometry and I passed it, and I took the Regency algebra and I passed it. I took the Regency German and I passed it. So it was the equivalent of 3 years high school.
The gymnasium, which I've always
They
heard of.
called it the 7-year school. They did away with any names under the Tsar.
Oh, I see.
You're right, but it was equivalent.
Because I have heard my
right.
parents.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Where did you learn to speak English?
In the United States. I came, I did not know a single word of English, and I started right away. I went to night school, and then our parents had a private teacher. Of course, education was terribly important in our home, and even in Russia, my mother had in addition to school, she always had a private teacher to teach us German, and she always had a private teacher to teach us music. We were taught how to play piano and music, and we went out of the way to give us really a maximum of education. So we had quite a background when we came here. And English, as I said, I studied here, and I came to New York. I was admitted to what was called then Yeshiva College. Now it's called Yeshiva University. And there I received my Bachelor of Arts from Yeshiva College in 1939. I was ordained into the rabbinate in 1941. And then I was honored by Yeshiva University when I was appointed to be the editor of a scholarly volume commemorating the late Dr. Rabbi, the founder, the first president of Yeshiva University. I have the volume right here if you want to see it. Memory of, Yeshiva University is the leading university outside of Israel. This is Dr. Revel. He was the founder of Yeshiva University, and I was the editor-in-chief of it.
I didn't know what your middle name was.
It's Bernard Aaron Poupko. So that was my first effort on the publication. And then I studied in Columbia I did graduate work there, as I mentioned to you. And I continued my higher education at the University of Pittsburgh, where I received my PhD in 1952. I wrote the first work on Jewish religious adult education, which is now a recognized work and used as a text in a number of schools, graduate schools of Jewish education. I also went to the City College of New York, I should mention. And yes.
I'm sorry, did you receive a degree from Columbia?
No, I transferred here. I came in the middle of the work, and I got here my doctorate. Now, later on, I was editor of the Rabbinical Council of America sermon volume. It's a scholarly sermon volume in memory of the late chief rabbi of Israel, and I was the editor-in-chief of it. I was the editor of it. Now, you see these volumes, here are, I cannot take them all out, here are about 34 annual volumes of sermons, and I have a record of over 350 sermons of mine published by the Rabbinical Council of America. I'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about.
I'm afraid we're losing your voice when
You
you
see,
Rabbi.
every year Rabbinical Council puts out a volume of the best sermons preached by rabbis in the United States, United Kingdom. And in these volumes, there are over 350 of my own. I'll give you an example. For example, in this volume, I have all the sermons, 24 sermons, 2 for each, for the book of Genesis here. And each one of these volumes contains such sections of my sermons. And right...
Yeah. Even I know what that is, secretary.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you know? You're a Jewish daughter. You expected to know. And presently, I am the associate editor of this volume. So whatever I'll tell you, I like to document. This is my weakness. And then I published a book in Yiddish. Where is it? It is called In the Shadow of the Kremlin. It was based on my 3 visits to the Soviet Union. I have also written over 300 articles in several languages on the Jews of Soviet Russia. These articles were published in Russian and in Hebrew, in French, in German, in English here. And I'm preparing another volume which will take out those which I believe deserve to remain in book form. And even as late as recently, I could show you right here, only 3 weeks ago, I had a long article on Jews in Soviet Russia. I received over 40 publications continuously from the Soviet Union. Here, they come in every morning, right here, straight from Moscow. And, of course, what am I interested in? What they write about Israel and about Jews. And I write articles on these articles, on these. This is, for example, the crocodile, which is the leading humor, sophisticated humor of Soviet Russia. And they always have some cartoons about Jewish, the hooked nose and the terrible eyes and whatnot. And I bring this to the attention of the world. For example, I was co-convener of the first Brussels conference on Soviet Jewry 5 years ago, and also of this last one, which was held in Brussels. And there I made a presentation at the plenary session showing how the Soviet Union emerged as the center of anti-Semitism and racism in the world. The Soviet Union is now the largest exporter of anti-Semitic, vicious, virulent, primitive anti-Semitic literature in the world. And right there, Wiesenthal met me, and he asked me to collaborate with him on a book. He will bring in the German aspect of propaganda, Streicher, Goebbels, what they have done prior to the Holocaust. First they dehumanized the Jew, and then they killed him. And this is what the Soviets are doing right now. I wish I could, let me see whether I have some of my stuff here, which is reproduced in Do you want to see it now, or what I could get at?
I think it would be better if you stayed with the text.
Yeah,
so that we
okay,
don't
I'll stay.
lose
Fine, I'll
these
do that.
important things.
Yeah, so anyhow, I have addressed the Brussels conference, and of course I don't like to brag, but as you probably know that I was the co-chairman of the first Rabbinical Council of America delegation of rabbis, which really opened up the door for American Jews to the Jews of Soviet Russia. I was the first rabbi to speak from the pulpit of the Central Synagogue in Moscow, and this was in 1964, and then I spoke again in 1965, and then again in 1967 when I was thrown off from the pulpit for invoking the state of Israel.
What year
And this was
that?
just a few days prior to the Six-Day War.
Oh, that was
In 1967, just prior to it was at the end of May, and I came up and they warned me not to mention Israel or Zionism, and I did not listen to them, which I felt I had to, because there were over 2,000 Jews in the synagogue. The ambassador of Israel was there, and when I finished my sermon, he embraced me and he says, this was the first time in 54 years that Jews of Russia heard openly from the pulpit about Israel and Zionism and other Jews. And since my first visit, I've thrown in myself into this work. I went to Europe. I met with Jewish leaders, with Christian leaders, and I started writing and speaking on this topic. I addressed in the United States close to 150 Jewish communities on the problem of Soviet Jewry. I went on television, I went on the radio. In fact, just now when I was in Brussels, I prepared, they asked me, I was invited to prepare programs for 11 foreign countries and I have demonstrated, I've shown the propaganda of the Soviet Union against Jews, Judaism, and Zionism, and so forth. And this has become a very major, central preoccupation of mine. And on the Pittsburgh level, we came and we organized the Pittsburgh Conference Soviet Jewry, and I was its first president or its first chairman. And I am continuously involved in this agonizing problem. And what else?
What else?
Yeah.
I noticed in the Chronicle a couple of weeks ago that you were just elected to some very important honor. What was it?
I was plenty. I have been for many years very active in the Rabbinical Council of America, which is the leading and the largest organization of Orthodox rabbis in this country. Our well over 1,100 rabbi members serve the religious needs of some 1.5 million Jews in the United States, the United Kingdom, and in Israel. I have been national vice president of RCA. I have been editor of several of their publications, and I am now the associate editor of the sermon volume, and I'm on the editorial board of the Rabbinical Council of America's prestigious scholarly journal, the quarterly scholarly journal known as Tradition. And I was the chairman of 3 national conventions of the RCA. I'm the only member, I believe, who had this honor. And one of these conventions, the first and the only convention of Orthodox rabbis, national convention of Orthodox rabbis to be brought to Pittsburgh, I brought it here in 1951. If you recall, we had sessions at the Y and at Webster Hall. Then I was chairman of the religious Religious Articles for Israel Commission, which got some 1,500 scrolls of the law to send to Israel to give to kibbutzim and so forth. And I'm also the permanent chairman of the Campus Commission of the Rabbinical Council of America, which takes care of the needs of students, their religious needs on the campus. And now I was elevated to be member of the Executive Committee of the Rabbinical Council of America, which is the central policy-making organ of the this organization. And I'm also on the Rabbinical Court Committee of the RCA, that dean, which is the Rabbinical Court. So this is as far as the RCA, but of course, I am very much involved in Zionist work, religious Zionist work. I served for well over 3 years as the national president of the Religious Zionists of America, Mizrahi, Hapoel, and Mizrahi, and I serve now as a member of the World Executive of the Religious Zionists of America, and I'm also a member now of the World Zionist Executive and of the Jewish Agency for Israel, where I go about twice a year to meetings to Jerusalem and so on. And one of my biggest prides, of course, is being the co-founder of the Hillel Academy of Pittsburgh, and being its chairman of faculty and personnel since its inception. I've been serving as chairman of this committee during the last 28.5 years continuously. We started Hillel Academy with 6 students, and we have now close to 400 and a high school, and our school has national recognition for scholastic caliber of our students. Our students are admitted to Harvard, to Yale, to Columbia, to Albert Einstein College of Medicine. We have now in medical school at one of our classes about 6 boys at one class alone in medical school. And this is one of my biggest prides, and of course the building of the new Sharet Torah.
When was this building?
Oh, I knew you would ask me this, and I prepared the data right here so that I would be accurate.
Yes.
Now, I told you that I came here in 1942, and we had a groundbreaking for this. First, we had high holiday services of the Sharet Torah in a rented hall where the Iron Kaufman settlement was on Forward Avenue. Do you remember?
Yes.
Where they have now the
bowling alley.
Right. Do you remember this?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Because I thought you are too young to remember
No,
this.
I'm not
old
too
enough
young
to
for
remember
anything.
it. Now, we had the first high holiday services in Squirrel Hill, the Iron Kaufman settlement, in 1945, Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. Then we had groundbreaking ceremonies for the new Sharet Torah, April 20th, 1947. And then we had our first religious services in one unit of this building, 4 walls, if you can call it a unit, and some kind of a roof, September 3rd, in 1948. In 1948, we had our very first, so in 1978, it will be 30 years. It's now 28 years. In 1948, we had our first services, and here I organized the first Hebrew school that this synagogue ever had. This is a historically venerated congregation. It was founded in 1880, and we are approaching our centennial celebration. And we were the first Orthodox synagogue in Pittsburgh to build a Hebrew school building. This was an innovation. And here in the shul, I had to organize from scratch the sisterhood, which is now the largest sisterhood of all the Orthodox congregations in this region, and the only one which sponsors an adult educational program with the book reviews every year. If you notice, we have 8 continuous weeks. I review books, and we have classes for the adults before the book review, and then we also have for the women special sessions in ethics of the fathers of the Talmudic sages, 6 weeks in between Pesach and Shavuot, Passover and Pentecost. And then we have the men's club, and this was the first Orthodox synagogue to organize the Sunday Minyan breakfast idea.
Is that right?
Yeah, the first one. I started this on the Hill, and we are going to begin now this coming September, the 35th consecutive year of it.
Do you find many Orthodox young people now?
Oh yes, we are experiencing an exciting phenomenon in the United States right we have a number of young people who, although they come from non-observant homes, I don't like to say non-religious. I believe religion is a very delicate, complex matter. There are people who observe nothing at all, and they can still be religious, in my thinking. Now, but I'm speaking of observance, Richard. We have many of these who came from homes where there was no observance, and they are in search, and they want to come back closer to tradition and to observance. We have them in this synagogue, we have them in other synagogues. There was a tremendous change since I came to Pittsburgh. When I came to Pittsburgh, there were very few observant Jewish youth. And now we have a substantial and impressive number of doctors, lawyers, scientists, academicians, business executives who are living a Jewish observant life. Some of the top positions here in Westinghouse occupied by Jews, personnel, research, others. I know they come to my Talmud lectures and so forth. They are observant Jews. There is one man who has top secrets of our nuclear defense system and so forth. A person who is regulated as to where he travels and how he travels because of all the secrets which he has. And he is a Jew who comes and learns a blood Gemara. You know, here on a Sabbath, I'll give you an idea what it means in Orthodox congregation. I preach and I deliver lectures 7 times each Saturday, in 24 hours of Saturday. We have a Talmud study group, a Bible study group, Ethics of the Father study group, and then we have other classes for the adults. And we emphasize learning very much because we live in an age of enlightenment when Jews, the American native Jew, is a graduate of the high school, and we're going to have a preponderance of them graduates of college. We can communicate with them. It's interesting, the higher the level of education, the easier it's for us to communicate with them. The easier it is for us to impart to them knowledge, even when it comes to some that come to us for conversion. And incidentally, you should know it for the record, I do not convert as a matter of principle. I never converted since I am in Pittsburgh. I will help the convert to get the proper instruction. I will guide he or her or him, and we have several in our own congregation, very sincere converts to Judaism. In 3 cases, they made their Jewish husbands observant, and they read Hebrew well. They have kosher homes. They study Jewish culture and history. And I do not hesitate to tell you, they know much more about Judaism than many, many born Jewish lovers. And they are people who came from universities and colleges, and therefore they have the tools of research and the learning and the methods. I'm not speaking to you about a mass movement. I'm just telling you of several. But of course, we are also facing the problem of intermarriage. We have families where 80 and sometimes 100% of the children are intermarried. I have here one family where 3 out of 4 children are married to Gentiles and non-converts. This would be bad. And it is a threat and it's a pain because the sub-zero level of population growth, of Jewish growth, plus intermarriage, plus assimilation, is a very serious threat. And if there will not be a radical change, I am afraid that Jews will lose by the turn of the century very much in their numbers and thus very much in their political influence, be it for the state of Israel or for other social causes in which we are intensely interested. So we are threatened to lose very much of our influence in the United States, the way things are going right now.
That's
I
tragic.
spoke on something you did not ask me. I don't know whether I should have spoken on this.
Well,
Oh, no,
we
of course,
wanna
we
know.
are interested. I think sometimes it's the family I know, well, the mother has been always extremely active in Jewish affairs. All three of the sons are married. Except I know the oldest one's wife has converted and is a very good Jew.
Yeah, here you got it, and so forth. Now, let's stick to the questions. Is that it? So you suppose go on with the questions?
Health, medical care, we're on 5.
Yeah.
Services available in childhood or early youth. Health and medical care.
Well, for example, in the Soviet Union, I mean, credit must be given where credit is due. Of course, they are not very much behind the Western world when it comes to medicine, when it comes to doctors and so forth. They are, of course, not on the high, sophisticated level of the United States. And speaking to Jewish doctors who come from the Soviet Union, and they come here unless it is in the field of psychiatry or some related fields when it comes to medicine itself, they are behind the American doctor and so forth. But we had, I would say, reasonable, satisfactory care as far as that is concerned in the Soviet Union, and that is all I can say.
And adolescent years, fun and recreation.
No, there was no fun
from what
for
you
me,
tell us,
and there was no recreation. I never knew of that.
Courtship, marriage, children, dwelling places.
Well, I told you about our children.
Yes.
I met my wife, Gilda. She is the daughter of the late Rabbi Novoseller. She comes from a very long line of rabbis and Hasidic sages. And she comes from Philadelphia. She is a graduate of Gratz College. And, of course, she's quite active in our own congregation. She teaches the Bible class. She's very active in the sisterhood. And she's quite active on her own in the affairs of Hillel Academy and other communal undertakings.
And she's very beautiful, too.
Thank you.
What year were you married?
What year was I married? I'm sorry my wife isn't here. I'm so embarrassed. I think it was...
how long were you married?
31 years. 31. I came here, I was a bachelor.
Oh, really?
No family.
Oh,
really? I had an apartment on Darlington Road. Do you remember Mrs. Greenberg who used to give piano lessons?
Yes.
And do you remember her?
Yeah.
She was from Russia.
Oh.
And I had an apartment with her on Darlington Road, next to the home of Dr. Asher Isaacs.
Yes,
I must mention the name of Dr. Asher Isaacs because he was very helpful to me in some of my projects, which I initiated in Pittsburgh, be it of a religious or of a cultural or of a communal nature. He was very helpful. You remember he was the editor of the American Jewish Outlook, the predecessor of the Chronicle.
Yes, he was the professor of economics
and head of the
Pitt.
Department of Economics. He was an expert on international economics.
And then you met your wife?
In Philadelphia, because our parents were friends. And I met her once at an affair which was held in one of my father's synagogues.
And you have, you said 5 children.
We have 5 children and 5 grandchildren. God bless them.
And you yourself are a twin.
Yes.
Aren't you?
And we
you
have
twins.
Right.
Are any of your grandchildren twins?
No,
Any of your
no, not yet.
I don't know, does it skip a generation or something?
But it's very exciting to have twins.
That'd be great. Well, it has its problems too, though, doesn't it? Now, occupations.
We know.
Yeah,
I think you've covered that.
Yeah.
Social life, family vacations, and
well, we go for vacation to the seashore, and because our parents had their places of vacation there in Marduk, New Jersey, or Denton, New Jersey, and to Israel, and occasionally to Europe. Our hobbies is we happen to be ardent lovers of classical music, so this is our hobby, to listen to a symphony. We go here to the symphony frequently. and we do much reading and socializing. We have our friends, but essentially the rabbinate is a very lonely profession. You are alone to some extent because life and responsibilities and interests put you that way. You cannot help it. But we do have, I am chairman of the Rabbinical Board, which is the original branch of the Rabbinical Council of America, and I am founder, and I was of the first presidents of the Rabbinic Fellowship of Pittsburgh, which takes in the three branches, the Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform, and of course there is a fellowship and a very pleasant relationship with colleagues in the community, and we cross lines on this. We do not speak to the Orthodox alone. Mm-hmm. I personally have been continuously invited here to speak in a lecture on Reform and Conservative congregations. Only yesterday I had an invitation from Israel. I spoke in Rosh Shalom numerous times. I used to open for a number of years the adult educational program, Temple Emmanuel, South Hills. So you see that we are interdenominational.
You're very busy too.
We try to be interdenominational, and it is fine. Neighborhoods, well, we have her children. They're wonderful neighbors. But there's one guy, Rex, I try to attract him. I can't.
No,
I try to bribe him with bones and meat, and I can't help.
No.
But you have to study, because I do have tremendous respect for any audience to which I am exposed, and I found that we always have intelligent, learned people, and they come up with unexpected but serious questions, and I don't take for granted. I believe that an audience deserves the very best. There's nothing too good for an audience, and I'll be frank with you, I am still very conscious when I have to face any kind of a lecture audience. I do not take it easily. Even here, when I have to go in, I teach 2 classes every day. In an Orthodox synagogue, you must have an adult class in the morning and in the evening, Talmud, Mishnah, and if I lecture 20 minutes, I will prepare about half an hour. Otherwise, I wouldn't dare to open up, because we have now many learned Jews. You asked me about the young generation. Don't forget, at schools like Hillel Academy, there are over 450 of these. There are over 100,000 students there. And we have quite a few college students who know some Talmud, and Jewish literature and Jewish history. And some of them do remain, I would say the preponderance of them remain observant Jews, committed Jews. In fact, I believe that your grandson had a friend, a student in Hillel, if I am correct. I think for some time.
Oh, yes.
I used to see near
Margie
Hillel.
Myers.
Yeah, didn't you go to
That's
Hillel?
right, she goes.
So you see
yes.
that I know what goes on.
My
in Hillel.
grandson's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you cannot take for granted we live in an age of enlightenment. Don't forget, the audience, the congregation which we have is not what it was of the immigrant class of 40, 30 years ago, or 50 years ago. And this is an age of enlightenment. Television has done tremendous. It has its liabilities, but it has done much. And therefore, you must never take your audience for granted. I give 2 sermons every Saturday, morning and late in the afternoon. I conduct classes. But I believe a rabbi must be well prepared if he loves and respects his audience. And if you do not love and respect, then you have no right to be a rabbi.
Right. I met quite a number of young men in the Technion who were very orthodox young men. I was involved in that through Mr. Levinson.
Right.
And I was so impressed with the quality of these boys who were scientists.
Yeah.
And they were extremely observant.
I have a nephew in Israel, Rabbi Professor Poupko. He got his PhD in Columbia when he was 19. He is an internationally known psychologist in his particular field of experimentation subject, and he's a Talmudist, observant, American-born, and so forth, and at the same time is a professor in an academic field, and you find many of these now. In Washington, in the Justice Department, we go in, over 60 younger people, Jewish prominent lawyers with yarmulkes are working. Over 60 of them, and they are let off during the short Fridays, winter time, 3 hours before sunset to go to Silver Springs or to the other suburbs of Washington to get back to their homes. They have a congregation of such observant scientists and high-level government workers, over 600. They don't employ a rabbi, because among them there are at least about 30 ordained rabbis. So it has changed, you know.
It's fine to see the caliber of these young men who are occupied in the world of science, and yet their orientation is right in their own religion.
Right.
Impact or involvement in politics, war, depressions, prohibition.
Well,
have you been involved actively
Well, I'll
in
tell you
politics?
how I have been involved. I have been a volunteer civilian chaplain to our Air Corps cadets who trained in Pittsburgh at universities during World War II. This is number one. Number two, I like to identify myself with the liberal progressive trend in politics. So quite often, even a Democratic candidate is not liberal enough for me. I want to speak to you very candidly about it, and sometimes we have to agonize very, very much. I do know that in the last elections, I did not vote. I did not want to vote for Nixon, and the other candidate was not exactly my idea. And although Nixon was a friend of Israel, and he did much for Israel, but because of my liberal tendencies, my conscience would not permit me to vote for a man like Nixon, just as I could not vote for our president if he's nominated for. I am not active in politics, and I never endorse from the pulpit any candidate. I am active to the extent with politicians and government officials where I can attain certain goals, either for Soviet Jewry or on behalf of the state of Israel. But otherwise, I am certainly not active in politics.
Thank you. Now, your children, it asks us to have you contrast the way you were raised with the way you raised them.
Well, our children were brought up in a free society, number one. Our children were brought up in a different level of material and economic comfort than we were brought up. Our children had more options than we had. We had much less options in life than we had. And of course, we went out of the way to expose them to an intensive Jewish education and also to a higher secular education. As to what they decided to be in life, that was purely their own convictions and their own decisions. We never told them what to be, and we never tried to influence them. I have discussions with our 18-year-olds. I ask them what they want to be. I ask them what they like to be, and this. But I am not trying to influence them. I'm telling them what my father used to tell us as his boys in his home. He said, I don't care what you are. I'm not asking to be a rabbi, be a shoemaker. But one thing, I want you to make the best pair of shoes on the block. You have to make the best pair of shoes. Then I don't care if you are a shoemaker. And that is what we tell our children, that they must search for excellence in life. Whatever field they choose, whatever they want to do, they should do it well. That's all.
Right. Well, you gave us the answers to 16 just about anyway, unless there's something you'd like to add to it. Religious observances, institutions, and organizations. I think that's pretty well covered, unless there is something you'd like to add.
Well, I just want to say together with you that the level of religious awareness, the level of religious enlightenment is much higher now than what it was decades ago, by virtue of the fact that we have much better facilities for Jewish religious education than we had before. And we also have a different caliber of religious leaders who are, whose efforts and activities are much more relevant to the needs of their constituency than it was decades ago in Pittsburgh or in Cleveland or in St. Louis or any other place. I believe that we are sensitive to relevancy, and we try to respond to the needs of the day, to the needs of the hour. I would say that Pittsburgh has improved because we have a larger, by far a larger number of educated, enlightened people who are vitally involved in Jewish learning, Jewish activities, Jewish needs, the state of Israel. And of course, the state of Israel brought about a tremendous revolution in the thinking and the commitment of young people, especially the Six-Day War. It has done miracles for the Jews of Soviet Russia and also for the Jews of Pittsburgh. Taking the incident in Uganda several weeks ago, how it electrified our youth. I spoke to Jews, some of them who are on the fringe, who are marginal, who are residual Jews. You know, they're marginal Jews, residual Jews, and so forth, and they were just electrified and excited. Now, the State of Israel has done a tremendous thing by way of exciting our youth with a sense of belonging, a sense of pride in their heritage, and it gave them a new sense of identity, and we are benefiting from it.
That's a very important statement. You were asked to contrast Pittsburgh today with Pittsburgh yesterday, socially, culturally, politically, environmentally.
Well, what do they mean when they say yesterday?
Well,
How
I
far
think
back?
we're thinking about people who were here around the turn of the century or in the 20s.
Well, that is,
No,
You've been
you
here.
weren't
Will not
around
come-
anywhere.
no, it would not come under my purview.
No,
No.
I don't
No,
think it would.
no.
Well,
Um,
how do you view Pittsburgh's Jewish life and
We
its
just
place
did
in the
that.
general community now? That's an important
Well, I believe that Pittsburgh is a well-organized Jewish community. That's the number one. I believe Pittsburgh Jews are generous. They compare very, very well with other communities in the United States and the United Kingdom. It is only tragic that our community numerically is not growing. We are going down, and I'll be honest with you, although it may be for the record, especially among the observant families, their children do not remain in Pittsburgh. They move out. They move out to New York, around New York, in the suburbs, to larger areas, some of them even to Israel. And we, the observant community especially, we do not succeed in keeping our children here. I know already all of our married children are not in Pittsburgh. And I have many, many friends who have exactly the same thing. And this diminishing tendency of the community is something which worries me very, very much. I'm very upset about it. And many of us rabbis, are beginning to serve a geriatric generation.
What do you think is the reason that they are, the observant younger people are moving off?
Well, many of them do not find enough of a social life for the observant in Pittsburgh as they would find it, let's say, in New York or in the suburbs of New York. You don't like to be a minority. You don't like to be an isolated group. You do not like to be the guy upon whom they point with a finger. Even with the increase in observance among youth, as you recognize, and you and I, they are still in the minority. Really, a decisive minority. and they would rather like to go places where there is a full community of observant Jews, where there is an enclave. And we have now in North America such enclaves. We have it in Far Rockaway, we have it in Bell Harbor, we have it in Bella Cynwyd near Philadelphia, we have it around Detroit, around St. Louis, we have it in Los Angeles, we have it in Boston, in Newton, Massachusetts. There are about 20 or 25 enclaves of observant Jews. See, I speak as And here we do not have such an enclave. Let's say Squirrel Hill. Well, Squirrel Hill has a predominant Jewish population. I do not believe that Jews are the majority in Squirrel Hill. I am not convinced of it as yet. I don't believe we are. But even here in Squirrel Hill, the overwhelming majority are non-committed, residual, and marginal Jews. Residual means I belong to Shara Torah because my grandfather belonged here. Marginal I am because I have not decided yet to turn to Catholicism or to Protestantism, and I'm sticking to Judaism, but not with knowledge, not with observance, not with a sense of loyalty, but I'm just marginal. I am right here in that periphery. And I would say that they are the crop of an illiterate Jewish generation, religiously illiterate. They did not receive a proper Jewish education. And the observant community with all the excitement and observance, and you see even the Lubavitcher, with the beards and the kaftans. I do tell you that one can be a full Jew without a kaftan and without the long beard and the earlocks. In fact, our parents, who were fully observant, they never permitted, even if one of the boys in the house wanted to have long earlocks, my father said, no, that's not necessary. According to the law, you don't need it. You just go up to here. But if you do more than is needed, and somebody will make fun of you, you will not do even that which is minimally expected of you. I don't want you to dress and act in a way that it will be hard for you to live among Gentiles. My father and my mother would always say. And therefore they insisted that we know several European languages. They insisted that we know music, that we know the arts. My mother would go out and pay with very much needed money at home to get tickets for us to go to the legitimate theater when we were 10, 11, 12 years old. We had a very fine theater in our city, but she insisted, she wanted us to go see the arts. Opera was terribly important. It was a necessity and so forth. And we in Squirrel Hill, we do not have a substantial number of the observant. They are still in a limited number.
Much limited.
Yeah.
I noticed that there isn't even a kosher restaurant in the city of Pittsburgh.
Right.
Are you aware of that?
Right. We tried twice, and it went bankrupt twice. Twice we tried it. Now there's a little kosher corner here where my kids, I know, get pizza. Kosher pizza and some other kosher things right here on Maria
Really?
Connor Hobart. Yeah.
And that's permitted.
Oh,
Because I know that the Hillel Foundation at the Y started the restaurant to meet that need.
And there too, we the rabbinical board, we took care of that restaurant, and now we have also a kosher bakery, Zulberg's. And in the bakery there can be many items which are not kosher. But we have now a kosher bakery, and in a volunteer gesture, we gave it endorsement and supervision.
When you had said that your family did not, are you of a Hasidic tradition?
My wife comes, of course, from the Tverskin, the Hasidic, but my parents not. Oh no, and they always insisted that you dress, you speak, you conduct yourself as anyone else. So you can still be a good Jew. And the same will for me.
You retain the respect of people, I think, when you don't make yourself look so different.
And with our children, we did the same, incidentally. Our children, too. We have the twins, and you'll be surprised in my own synagogue. There are youngsters of their age who will come with a black hat, and they will come with a long pants, but not my book, my Ruby the Hood.
I never knew what the significance of the black hat was.
Well, it is just to create more and more a wall of separation. This is their argument. But I believe that identity is established through learning, through scholarship, through knowledge, through awareness, through enlightened commitment. Enlightened commitment. I do not believe that I have to look different from someone else when I walk in the street.
Do you have many Hasidim in your congregation?
We have some who are very sympathetic. Hasidism is sketching, and I'll tell you why.
Is what?
It is sketching the imagination, because they are identified with those who are anti-establishment. Take the Eastern cults now on the university campuses. They have wide appeal because they are somewhat different and they're challenging the established church, the established synagogue, and so forth. And because they are so different with the long, the kaftan and the beard and the earlocks and with their singing. For example, the University of Pittsburgh calls me up, the dean of graduate school, being that I was a visiting lecturer at the university, and they asked me to sit in on a PhD examination. You know, when you write your thesis, you have to defend it. The oral defense is the most important and crucial time. And they asked me to sit in together with the professors to examine. And you'll be surprised what kind of examination. I sit in often on such examinations. But this time was a young girl brought up in a non-observant Jewish home. And she decided to write about the nigun, the melody of the Hasidim, the daughter of Dr. Yale. Is this somebody?
Yeah.
Yes, it's
You
on.
Can I keep it this up?
Right.
And because there are quite a few of these. They see something different. The Eastern cult, the dress and this, and anti-establishment. You're entirely different. You know Jesse Cohn, who is very young.
Yeah.
His daughter married such a chassid.
Is that right?
I think Chaim Potok's books have a lot to do with the interest.
Yes.
The kids are studying them in the...
Yeah. Well, it may be. I would put together a number of things, and don't forget also that they are very militant and very aggressive and very active. They will go out and they will proselytize on Murray Avenue. They have a van, and did you know this?
Yes.
And a bus, and they will stop your son, your husband, and bring a collective sense.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you put on film? Wouldn't you say a prayer? And this is a novelty, because we Jews never indulged in this kind of work. In fact, when the Gentiles come to me, and quite often, from the university, from other places, to convert to Judaism, I, as a rabbi, am obligated to discourage.
Do you get many people who want to convert other than because of marriage? No.
Only once I had a Catholic priest. No, and two students. Three I had. But it had nothing to do. A Catholic priest didn't get anyone to convert. I discouraged them.
Well, I know proselytization is against.
We don't approve of. We don't spend even 1 penny to save a soul.
I think that Elizabeth Kostok was not Jewish. This girl's mother. I knew her. She's the one who died.
She's of the first marriage.
Yes, well, that's what I'm talking of.
Yeah.
Well, is this child of the second marriage?
No, she's of the first.
Of the first. Well, that was her mother.
So the first one was Jewish.
No.
I thought that.
I knew her mother.
Oh, so you know better.
Yes. She was not.
Can we turn this up for a moment? Wait a minute. Yes, well, I would like to say this. No living human being accomplishes everything which he wants to accomplish. And sometimes he does not accomplish even a fraction of what he dreams to accomplish. And I think it would be improper and immature for me to say what I accomplished, because it is too soon. I'm too much involved. I'm too much subjective. I believe years later we'll be able to tell better what was accomplished. I believe it is too soon and too close to the theme. And then there is a teaching of one of the great rabbinic moralists. He said that there is no mitzvah, there is no commandment to be a success in life. And there is no mitzvah to achieve in life. There's only a mitzvah, a commandment to try to achieve, to make every effort. But you must not be triumphant, and victory is not a mitzvah. We must, and I say it here in my congregation and in the causes in which I'm involved, maximum effort for minimum chance. As to what the results will be, this will lead to destiny and to the wheel of fortune. Sometimes the farmer puts in the best seed in the world in the ground, but then comes the hurricane and destroys it. You don't have the water, you don't have the sunshine, and so forth. So I am grateful, I would say, for the opportunity to have been able to make an effort in several areas of Jewish life, be it Jewish education, be it Jewish scholarship, be it Jewish religious observance, be it Soviet Jewry, be it the state of Israel. I am grateful to God that I had an opportunity to be identified with these causes, to be involved, to have directed my efforts towards it. As to what it has produced or will produce, I really would not comment on it. This I'll leave over for future generations and for the historians. Let them decide. I don't have to tell you, as a human being, I have an ego. I will not tell you that I'm totally self-effacing. When I walk in my library there and I see my name in the Jewish Encyclopedia and in other books, and some of my things quoted in other books, and this, of course, I derive a level of pleasure and so forth. But to say that I have had tremendous achievements and victories in this, I don't know. I just have tried, and I hope it will yield some results and so forth. That's all.
I think this has been a tremendous interview.
I do too.
Thank
We
you
don't
so
have
much.
any details on how long are your parents alive?
My
or-
father is not alive. My father passed away about 12 years ago.
And your mother is?
My mother, yes, thank God.
And she's living in Pittsburgh?
Brooklyn, New York,
No.
with one of my sisters. Yes.
I don't know how to thank you for this.
Oh, please. It
been
was a
very
pleasure to be
exciting.
with you. It's how often do you meet with you? Such intelligent women as you are, and you have been very kind and stimulating, really.